Alright, here we are with the rebuild of the shock, front shock on my 1970 Honda CB750. Like I said in the previous video when I disassembled it, all the videos I've seen on YouTube have not had a similar inner setup that mine does, so I'm going through this to show you guys the inners of my front suspension. Like I said before, I think it was custom to give it a more cruiser-like effect ride. I'm going to go over the parts here to show you what was in it and what I've done to shorten the forks and replace the fork seals in this video. So here we start off with the lower receiver. We got the dampening rod that goes down into the receiver, gets bolted on. We have the fork tube, the bushings. We have the inner spring. We have the spacer that was on top of the spring. With this rebuild, I've cut these spacers down to 1 inch, and I'm leaving 1 inch in there instead of the full 4.5 inches that it was. You have your seal. Now notice on your seal there's a wider gap on one side and a narrower gap where the spring sits on each side. The wider gap goes down onto and into the receiver. You have your washer that goes over the seal. On the washer there's a flat side and there's a side that has recessed. The recessed side goes down on top of the seal. You have your snap ring that goes over the washer to hold everything in place. And you have your nut that goes on top. So first, what you want to do is take your 10mm drain plug nut, bolt, and tighten that down. Make sure that's in place and tightened. Then you're going to take your dampening rod. There's no spring on this dampening rod, which is, I found odd, but this is how the fork was when I disassembled it. So I'm reassembling it the same way. Put your dampening rod down into the receiver. Now you're going to want to put your finger in there and hold that in place. You're going to take your bolt, your washer, and put that into the dampener rod. It can be a little tricky to find the hole that the bolt sits in, but just wiggle it around a little bit. Be careful not to cross thread anything. You don't want to cross thread this. There it goes. I'm putting my finger in here to hold the dampening rod, put a little tension on it so I can tighten this down. Get it nice and snug, and then we'll tighten it all down at the end. Now next, we're going to take the fork tube. I'm going to slide the fork tube down over the dampening rod into the receiver. Now, what we're going to do is you're going to take your new oil seal. I chose All Balls Racing for the oil seals. You can choose whatever seals you want. We're going to take that, place that over, slide it down into place into the receiver. Now you got to seat this into place, and the way we're going to seat this is I'm going to take the old oil seal. What I'm going to do is I'm going to slide it over, put it on top of the new seal. I'm going to take a pair of pliers, and with the open end, I'm going to put it over this old seal I'm going to take a hammer and I'm just going to lightly tap each side. I'm going to rotate it. Just seat this new seal down in place. Trying to evenly seat the seal. Once you think it's seated, now we're going to take the old seal back off. What I'm going to use to do that is my screwdriver. All I'm going to do is take the screwdriver here, a little screwdriver, and take it in there and pry this old seal up. Because this won't seat and get pressed in, it will just go over the old one. Take your old seal off. Check that the oil seal has been seated all the way down in place, which it pretty much lines up perfectly with that old seal, tapping it down into place. Next comes your washer. Make sure the side with the recess in the washer goes down over the oil seal. Next, we're going to take our snap ring, which holds it all in place. Go and invest in a set of these snap ring pliers at Harbor Freight, guys. They'll make this job a lot easier than trying to use pliers or a screwdriver. This job just makes it that much easier when you have the right tools. Once you get the snap ring in, make sure you check it with the screwdriver. Make sure it's seated all the way down into the channel. That's in place. Now what we're going to do next, take your spring, insert the spring to the tube. I'm going to take this 1-inch spacer that I made out of the old spacer, just cut it down. I'm going to put that into place. After that's done, now all we need to do is take some fork oil, some Maxima Race and Fuel fork oil here, 20 weight. Fill that up to the specifications on the size fork you have. After you fill that up, just cycle the shock through a few times. Go ahead and take your top cap and put your top cap on, applying a little bit of down pressure. That's it. And you have your fork all rebuilt with a new seal.